And it's like, people are like, well, what exactly did it look like? Or what do these spirits look like? It's like, I don't know. They just were dark.
I don't see details. I didn't see like exactly what these demonic spirits would look like.
How do I even describe it? Like almost like a monkey on steroids, yet very jagged.
I don't remember any angels. Can I tell you why? They were there, angels were there, but there's actually a reverence. They don't even want you to look at them.
Did you see seraphims?
They had a shine to them that was glorious.
People ask me details about angels. I wasn't even allowed to look at them. I don't even have a memory of what they look like.
Did you see eyeballs?
Absolutely.
I used to work in a coffee shop that was in a convention center that was also right by the CN Tower and the Rogers Center, as well as the aquarium. So I dealt with tourists all the time. Most were fine, but some could be frustrating. Like the amount of American tourists who were shocked that we had a different currency than them and that I didn't have their country's change to give them, as if they didn't notice that at some point they crossed an international border. And to be fair, I've also been a tourist a number of times, and I'm sure that I have done things that annoy the locals.
That's where they make the HP sauce. Remember in So I Married an Axe Murderer when they went here? No, I don't.
And the thing is, I like being a tourist. I like tourist traps. I'm not the kind of guy who, when he travels, he wants to see like what the locals see and skip all the tourist traps. No, I want to go to see what that city is known for. But there's also a very interesting type of tourism that has been getting a lot of attention lately, and that is heaven tourism. That's right, people who claim that they have died, they went to heaven, they came back, and now they're writing a book about their journey. Hey everybody, thank you so much for liking and subscribing and commenting, and thank you so much for waiting this long for this video. I put a lot of work into it. I hope you can tell by watching it. It's also very long, but I'm very proud of this one. I think you'll like it, and let me know what you think down below. Should I do these longer ones? These deep dives, if you will. Tell me what you think. There are a lot of books by people who claim that at some point they died and went to heaven and then were sent back. And there are also a lot of interviews and videos of people talking about their trip to heaven.
Charlotte says she was led into heaven by angels.
There's no fear. It's like pure joy. When the angels takes over, there's no fear. When you're going home, it's pure joy.
She says she then began to recognize deceased family members.
I seen my mom. I seen my dad.
Dad, is this heaven?
It's not heaven, but the lighting is nice, right? It's a nice time of day.
Immediately, unexpectedly left my body, and I found myself 30, 40 feet up in the air looking down at my dead body. And I realized, as I watched everything happening, I felt really bad. I didn't want my sisters to see me die. But I noticed a light over my shoulder. It was coming over my right shoulder, flowing, a golden light. And I turned to look, and there was a man floating up there with me, and I recognized him immediately, which was kind of unusual. I shouldn't have recognized him. I was raised in an atheist Jewish family.
Am I in the kingdom of heaven?
I remember when I left my body that I was in a beautiful, beautiful field. The flowers were so vibrant and alive. There are no words to describe what it's like to be in the presence of Jesus, the love and the light and the purity. The love is unsurmountable. It is all-consuming. The music was more beautiful than any tabernacle choir, any orchestra. It sounds like hundreds of thousands of people praising God.
I die.
Here we go again.
This is heaven.
Yeah, he keeps waking up and asking that. You had a heart attack, Gary, for the third friggin' time.
That I saw Jesus face to face. The unbelievable rest and peacefulness of what I was experiencing was Jesus standing there with his arms open wide. And right behind Jesus standing there was this incredible glow. It was the most vibrant and beautiful yellow.
Did I die? Is this heaven?
Nah, because I'm wearing a bra. There's no way they make you wear a bra in heaven.
But the most famous heaven tourism book would probably be Heaven is for Real, about a 4-year-old boy who was taken up to heaven by Jesus and some angels and had some adventures in heaven.
That you had actually met Jesus. What was he like in heaven?
Well, Jesus, he was one of the most powerful people there, and he had really pretty eyes.
And a horse too, I understand, from what you've said.
Yeah, he also had a white horse with rainbow-colored hair that I liked seeing.
And they even made a movie about it starring Captain Amazing.
No, that's where the angels sang to me.
The angels sang to you?
Captain Amazing. What a surprise.
But the thing is, in the movie, it shows that his dad is a pastor, and it shows that he spends a lot of his time at church, or church people spend a lot of their time at his house, and they talk about angels and heaven a lot.
Really good, Douglas. Voices of angels, right?
Here she comes, my angel.
So it's not surprising that he would think about heaven.
But unlike his peers, Colton has a story that's been heard around the world. A story that began 10 years ago when he almost died.
What does almost died even mean? Look, I'm not saying it wasn't life-threatening. I'm not saying it wasn't a scary situation, but what is almost dying? Because there's a huge difference between almost dead and dead. Because almost dead is alive. And I don't want to pretend like this wasn't a scary situation. It definitely was. But I just don't see how you go to heaven for almost dying.
There's a big difference between mostly dead and all dead.
It all started when Colton was 4 with a near tragedy.
We'd really hit a real low because we looked at each other and knew we'd really blown it.
What they thought was the flu turned out to be a burst appendix.
We think it had burst for 5 days, so for a little kid to have all that poison in him for that long.
4 years old is very young. It is a very impressionable age. And the fact that so many news networks were like, yeah, we should probably tell the story without an ounce of skepticism, in my opinion, is irresponsible journalism. Even if it's supposed to be a happy, feel-good story, they're telling a story about somebody dying and going to a magical land as fact.
A few angels, they came, picked me up, and I was looking right at Jesus.
That's right, Colton, their 11-year-old, has been to heaven.
Really, NBC News. We're just saying that as fact.
Were you afraid when the angels came to see you?
Yes, I was very afraid because I could look down and I could see myself, but I could also see my dad and my mom, and they were in completely separate rooms in the hospital. And I was scared out of my mind, but I was on Jesus' lap, and he had the angels sing to me, and they calmed me down.
Oh my God, poor kid. This does not sound like a kid who wants to be there. This sounds like a kid who is being told by his parents that he has to tell this story again for the millionth time. He doesn't talk like he's a kid retelling a fun thing that happened to him. He talks like a kid who was told that he has to tell this story one more time.
Well, I probably remember that I spent a lot of time with him. A majority of the time I was in heaven, I was with Jesus.
This is a kid who doesn't want to tell that story. This is a kid who maybe when he was 4 years old made up a story because he was a 4-year-old and 4-year-olds make up stories. And now he has to keep telling that story because he is now his family's main source of income. And again, they also included this in the movie.
How tight are we this month?
No, don't talk about money.
Slim Force couldn't pay for those garage doors. Donated some carpet for the church instead.
They were struggling with money And now they have a best-selling book and a movie deal. So this is Colton recently as an adult.
When I was in high school, obviously traveling for the ministry, traveling for the book, traveling for the movie, at that point in time, I was just kind of going because I was told by my parents, all right, we're going here. All right, we're doing this. Like, I didn't really have that much of a say. But I remember in high school, that's around the time that God really started challenging me. Like, hey, you don't have to rely on this one experience with me. Like, I want to do life with you. I want to be a part of your life today.
Yeah, he didn't want to go around saying the same story over and over again. The thing is, he probably does remember going to heaven. Because the thing about memory is we don't actually remember events. Not really. It's not like we have these hard drives full of memories where you just think of a time and then it pulls up a video and you watch that memory. Every time we remember something, we adjust that memory. Our memories are memories of memories. When you think back on something, you're thinking about the last time that you remembered it. So the file can get a little corrupted. We also know that children have a very strong imagination. And what you're supposed to do when a child has a really good imagination is encourage that creative side. You're not supposed to be like, oh, did that actually happen?
I dreamed the boogeyman was after me, and he's
Boogeyman! And then go on a book tour about the fantastical story your child told you. You see, another popular heaven tourism book was a book called The Boy Who Came Back from Heaven about a kid named Alex Malarkey.
I said, are there angels here? And his face just lit up.
The first time was when I saw the angels catch Daddy. The car hit us. I slammed it in my seatbelt. Daddy flew out the car and the angels caught him.
He continued to describe supernatural encounters, leaving his family, friends, and their church family with challenging questions of what to make of Alex's visions.
I didn't know what to do with it. The more pragmatic, quote, educated, unquote, part of me thought maybe he does have brain damage. Maybe he's imagining things. But yet I knew that there was an authenticity to it that I realized the problem wasn't Alex, the problem was me.
But there wasn't. He was a child and he was making up stories because children sometimes make up stories. His dad took the story he was telling, saw dollar signs, and wrote a book about it. Alex later admitted that, yeah, he made it up. He was a child. He made up a story when he was a child. He went public with this because he didn't want to live with the guilt of this lie being out there as fact. And a lot of news articles called him a liar and painted this child as the villain. But he was a child. He was telling a story about magical beings and an adventure he went on. He was a child. And when it got too big, he did the right thing and he told the truth. Of course he didn't go to heaven. Be the adults here. He was a kid who was paralyzed from the neck down, and his outlet was storytelling. And that is what should have been encouraged. The storytelling, the creativity. But instead, they sold one of his stories as fact. This is Gabe. Gabe really wanted to be an influencer. Specifically, a Christian influencer.
If we make this 3, we get to read a scripture today. Guess we made it. Romans chapter 1. Oh, you're still here? You must be hungry for God. This is a photo of Jesus standing at the door. And before you keep scrolling today, would you let him in? Think about that. And here is a Bible scripture that will absolutely 100% change your life. If you won't have time to hear it, you can stay here. John chapter 3 and verse 16. Oh, you're still here.
And you know he really wanted to be a Christian influencer because he did videos with Big Nick.
Never goes out. Jesus isn't saying for you to cut off your arm, but he's saying that the severity of physical injury is a lot less worse than the severity of eternal destruction in hell. So what's the good news in all of this?
But lately he's been getting more recognition than ever before, and he's been on countless podcasts and shows.
He's a pastor, YouTuber, and author who says he spent 18 days in heaven.
I'm very excited about today's guest. Gabe Poirot went to heaven for 18 days.
Today we got Gabe Poirot in studio. How you doing, man?
my joy to welcome into the conversation with me today, Gabe Poirot.
Gabe Poirot, welcome to the podcast.
Well, Gabe, welcome to Maybe God.
Gabe Poirot joins me now.
My guest, Gabe Poirot.
Gabe, it is such a joy to have you on the Glory Hour.
Yeah, Gabe Poirot. Gabe Poirot.
Gabe Poirot.
We've got Gabe Poirot on the podcast.
That's right. After being an influencer for a while, God was like, you know what? Why don't you come up to heaven? I'll show you around.
And bring snacks so it feels like a real party. Don, chips, Pat, Pop, and Jake, why don't you cook something simple like a hot dip or something?
A hot dip?
A hot dip or something. Yeah, bring it to my house.
And good news, he wrote a book about it. So my original plan was to watch a bunch of Heaven Tourist videos and just do a breakdown of the genre like I had done years ago on my podcast, but do it more in a video essay format. But after watching a couple of Gabe's interviews, I knew that I had to dedicate the rest of this video to our friend Gabe here. Partially because he's super popular right now. We should look at this. And partially because it's like a car accident and I couldn't look away. So this all started in 2021, after he had been an influencer for a while.
So it was October 25th, 2021. Very ordinary day, 70 degrees in Texas. I was hooking around the curve of the road with my friends, riding an electric skateboard, going about 30 miles per hour.
I'd race my friends on it. And at the time, I didn't have any concerns. Helmets are for weirdos, you know what I mean? And
nerds.
Nerds, yeah. And so we had hooked around the curve of the road.
And there's this little light bump in that middle of the road. And my skateboard hooked left, and as I was just going right around that curve, I flipped off my skateboard at about 30 miles per hour, and I backflipped and landed directly.
You didn't see the bump. It caught you by surprise.
Of course not. Yes.
I am so glad he asked that question. That there is real journalism. Take notes, NBC.
Skull immediately cracked from the top down to the spine.
And blood was everywhere, gushing out of my ears. Pressure had built up. And my friend actually held my lifeless body in his arms. It went plank. He ran over to me and held me up.
So yeah, that sounds awful. Nobody should have to go through that. That must have been very scary for his friend to witness and really scary for his friends and family. But obviously he can't remember any of it. He was knocked out.
It was so wild because I saw this from above my own body. I saw my body, but my body wasn't me.
So you left your body straight away as soon as your head cracked on
it was pretty much immediate.
Who are you? Elmer, I'm your guardian angel. I've assumed the form of someone you would recognize and revere. Sir Isaac Newton. Sir Isaac who?
Yeah, so it's pretty wild because I was above my own body, and I looked at it and I said, wow, that was me, but that's not me, because who I am is like fully alive now. I immediately left my body. I immediately died right then and there, lost breath. My body went rigid. I looked at my friend as he held my body in his arms.
It's like all the detail. I didn't see like intimate details other than it was just like my friend was holding up my body in his arms.
Whoa, that's intense. So he's floating above his body and he sees his friend holding him, but there was no intimate details.
That being said, I literally saw his prayers, and I saw that it wasn't just his arms holding me up. His prayers were holding up my body.
So he saw his friend, no intimate details, but he did see his prayers. He must have been floating there a while if his friend was able to make it over to him, pick him up, and pray.
I saw that he wasn't just flesh and blood anymore, but like he had a spirit inside of him too. And I saw that.
Oh, wow. He could see his friend's spirit? That's kind of cool. I would say seeing my friend's spirit, that would be an intimate detail, but maybe I just have a different definition of what an intimate detail is. I'm probably being too picky here.
Your spirit soul had left your body. Yeah, my spirit just exited my body. It was as smooth as you taking that shirt off.
I think I'm just gonna pop it off.
Oh,
What do you think about this?
about what?
What I'm presenting you.
You know when you take off your clothes? When you get home from work and you just take off your jacket?
Yeah.
That was just my glove. I literally felt like I was taking off a shirt when I left my body.
Wow.
Yada, yada, yada. Take their shirts off.
I don't know if you're picking up on his intense emotional expressions, but you're going to see a lot of them today.
And I was finally seeing me for who I truly was, Sid. I wasn't just a body, because I was looking at my body. Who I really was a spirit. I had just left my body like a glove.
Quickly understood I am not limited by my body. My body is literally, it was just my earth vehicle is what I call it. It literally is just an earth vehicle. Who I truly am, I felt like I took my first breath. I was like,
So your soul is leaving your body.
yeah,
And besides seeing yourself on the ground,
my body, yeah.
When I watch shows like Black Mirror or Upload, as much as I enjoy those shows, I can't help but feel like they don't truly understand what it means to be a person, what it means to be an individual. Or they don't think the viewer will care enough, so they don't put too much detail in. But when they portray putting people's consciousness into a machine, I can't help but wonder how much they are programming in things like how our gut affects our brains, how much of our personality depends on what food we've been eating or what temperature the room is. Plus the fact that we change over time as our life progresses. As we go through different development stages in childhood, as we go through puberty, through adolescence, as we develop our frontal lobe, who we are changes. Our body is doing a lot to us, to our identity, to who we are and how we think and how we express ourselves. So to separate our mind from our body seems to me like you're creating a completely separate entity. Because there's no way that we can just replicate our mind without our body. Plus the fact that our brain is an organ. And in my opinion, our brain and our mind are the same thing. And I know a lot of you disagree with me on that. And that is fine. You are allowed to disagree with me. Because I still haven't been convinced otherwise. And I really believe that our mind and our brain are the same thing. But again, if you have information that will change my mind, I'm more than happy to hear it. So to me, though, we are our bodies. I mean, sure, if we can show that he is telling the truth and study human souls or spirits, that would change things. But I can't help wonder who that person would be, who that person leaving the body would be, because I just don't see it being the same person.
what then? What else are you seeing? Is there light? What does it look like around you?
So there's three heavens. There's the first heaven, which is the blue sky. It's where we got all the snow this past week. It's what we're used to. It's what we live in. But then there's the second and third heaven. And a lot of times we talk about the third heaven, which is where the Father is, the throne room. But we don't talk about the second heaven enough, actually. The second heaven is where there is war. I'm telling you, civil war unlike anything you have ever seen. Like spiritual warfare, unlike anything you ever heard of. Like it's no longer just in a Hollywood movie. Like I'm talking real. And so I'm just passing through and I'm suctioned up. As I go higher, I witness just in my peripheral, I'm aware of the chaos that's on this earth, the spiritual chaos specifically.
He floats out of his body. He gets a bunch of details, but I guess no intimate details. Then he keeps floating up and he sees spiritual warfare in the second heaven, but it's just in his peripheral.
It's just suctioned up. I was just allowed to see that there's genuine chaos over this earth.
You can't touch us! We're in a force field!
And the influences over nations and not just presidents, not just leaders or, you know, Hollywood, but over every single person. And I saw just these demonic forces that were like working, influencing nations and presidents and just people like puppets.
So, wow, from his perspective, floating up over that one street, he could see presidents and nations and like a bunch of people.
So I saw this spiritual realm. We were all Muppets. We were all puppets.
Now I've seen everything. Good, can we leave?
And I was allowed to see these, what I call familiar spirits. I don't exactly have a word for them, but they literally were so familiar with people and they were the ones controlling interactions, relationships, and specifically harbors of hearts of unforgiveness. So it was like unforgiveness was the biological food matter to these demonic spirits.
Oh, here I am thinking that they believe that humans have free will, and that's why some people go to heaven and some people go to hell. That's why there's evil on earth, because free will exists. But apparently we're all puppets doing the work of demons?
And it was pretty wild because I witnessed specifically over humans, there was this storage vault of specifically unforgiveness and resentment. And when any human would hold unforgiveness or resentment against another person or another thing, it actually harbored this chain that these other wicked spirits would come and they would eat and they would actually feast upon that same trauma that the person went through.
how long was he floating there? He gets a full view of the world, an understanding of demonology, how demons eat. He can interpret what he sees as being the result of unforgiveness and understand it as a food source. That's a lot of information to process. And if you've seen my videos before, you know that I hate when people preach that you have to forgive. That I hate the idea of forgiveness being mandatory. Because requiring forgiveness only benefits the person who is victimizing people. And it does nothing for those who have been hurt. I've seen way more damage caused by forced forgiveness than I've ever seen from unforgiveness. Am I saying forgiveness can't be good? No. Forgiveness has its place. Forgiveness can be an awesome thing, but it's not the only way to heal. And it's kind of strange that this magical world that is supposed to be all around us works by the same evangelical view of forgiveness, but in like a visual Narnia book kind of way. Or maybe I'm one of the Muppets being tricked here.
There are no gray angels. There are, but they're not gray. They're dark.
You know, there are, but there aren't.
There's no.
When you say gray angels, what do you mean by that?
Gray is a mixture. Gray is a neither light nor dark, right? It's a question. Oh, who is that? They kind of look light. It looks like it could be something good, but they're very dark inherently.
It didn't actually look like clear light versus darkness. In the second heaven, the spiritual warfare, I saw the light, but I actually saw how most of the darkness almost looked exactly like the light.
So he understands by looking that there are no gray angels, but also he understands that the bad ones look like the good ones. But we, who are not having an out-of-body experience, can't see the fallen angels. So why would it matter what they looked like? But if he is looking at them and he can tell immediately that they are bad, what does he mean that they look like they're good? Because he's the one looking.
Looking through a different alternate universe.
I'm losing my mind. I'm seeing demons. No.
That is not good. That is not good.
And it's like, people are like, well, what exactly did it look like? Or what do these spirits look like? It's like, I don't know. They just were dark.
I don't see details. I didn't see like exactly what these demonic spirits would look like, but I just saw their influence was so beyond what people understood. I saw that.
Okay, but he doesn't actually know what they look like. He just knows that they were dark, but also kind of looked light sometimes.
Yeah. Can I tell you what was so fascinating about it? They were twofold at the same exact time. There would be this, like, you knew they were monsters and like grotesquely ugly, like just, how do I even describe it? Like almost like a monkey on steroids, yet very jagged, very.
That sounds like you've just made it up. Sounds fake. No,
it's challenging to describe. But also, there was actually a horrendous beauty to them, like a false light beauty to them.
So he didn't know what they looked like. He could just see that they were dark and that they were kind of light sometimes, and he could see their influence. But also, they looked like a monkey on steroids, and they were jagged but beautiful.
I'm an actual demon.
I was just passing through the spiritual realm. They are so familiar. They're almost beautiful. They're comfortable. They don't look demonic. We talk about demonic things on social media, and we can put a title and a caption to it, and everyone knows it's demonic. But I'm here to tell people, like, the demonic realm, from what I experienced, was very happy with you being comfortable with them. And you would even look at a demon and at times even say, wow, they're beautiful.
I don't know what he means when he's talking about demonic stuff on social media. That's something that feels like you have to be in their group to get that. But I would say that a jagged steroid monkey sounds a little demonic, I guess. Unless it's nice.
I needed that. I needed that laugh.
This is why I love meeting new people.
For me, that detail, I'm a skeptic, sort of wired person. I always want to question everything. And
No, he isn't.
That for me lends credence to your story because it's such an unexpected detail. Like, everybody expects the tunnel of light part. Everybody expects seeing familiar faces on the other side and love and everything. But like going through that little detail of seeing this earthly battleground for a spiritual war playing out, how that explains so much of the pain and suffering and discord you witness. That is an interesting detail.
He's from a charismatic church. Of course, he believes that the world is controlled by demons. Nobody who thinks like a skeptic would think this adds credence to his story, especially when you see how inconsistent he tells it.
Was that a very quick interaction, or then you got to the third heaven where you see other things, or was there like a process where it felt like you were kind of in second heaven
a little bit of a sludge, but it was pretty quick. But also, I still understood that I had made it out of the sludge. I call it like a sludge pot, a mosh
in second
pit.
heaven?
The second heaven is
Okay.
a mosh pit
Gotcha.
of chaos.
Okay.
It was quick. It was quick when he saw his friend go over to his body, and his friend picked him up, and then he could see his friend's spirit, and then he could see the prayers, and then he could see all the demons having influence over presidents and nations in Hollywood, and then he could see them feeding on our storage bins of unforgiveness, and then he saw that they look like jagged steroid monkeys who weren't gray, but they were dark, but they also could be gray, but actually they're dark, but also they look light. That all happened quickly.
I describe my story. Obviously, I talk about the ambulance coming and all those things, but
You
no,
just
I didn't
know
see
that.
the details
Yeah.
of the ambulance or even like the details of the hospital because I was already suctioned out by that time.
So these interviews were all in the last few months in 2026. But here is an excerpt from an interview he did in 2022, 6 months after the accident.
And during this, as soon as it happened, I just was with Jesus.
The it that he is talking about here was the accident. He says as soon as he hit his head, he was with Jesus. And in case you think he misspoke here or I'm just clipping it to make it sound like that's what he was saying, listen to this.
From the moment like when you had the accident, you talked about you were suddenly with Jesus. Did you have any kind of an out of body experience, or did you immediately transition to heaven? Like what's the context there? Everybody's experience is a little bit different.
Sure. Yeah. So I just have I just know I was with Jesus, like just right. He was right here, and God was here. I didn't see God.
He had the accident and then immediately saw Jesus. But somehow, 4 years later, it changed into that epic tale you heard today. But in the world of NDEs or near-death experiences, this is actually encouraged. So this clip is from a later interview with the same guy.
Dr. Jeffrey Long is one of my favorite authors in the space, and he says often it takes somebody up to 7 years to process what they experienced in a near-death experience or one of these afterlife encounters. And you're maybe a year-ish, not quite removed from your experience, or a little more than a year now? I'm trying to remember what the
just a little more than a year.
Okay, so you've had a little more than a year to process. I'd love to just hear, in terms of what anything new God's revealed to you, anything you understand differently. How are you? You're twice as far out, so to speak, from when we talked in June of just living with this, processing it. Give us an update on that.
He was encouraged to take some time and remember more about what happened.
Yeah, absolutely. So it's something that is so large that to fit into, I'm currently working on writing about it. And the writing is actually helping pull things out of my spirit. And it's a really interesting thing where there are things that my spirit man knows just because he knows.
So I've been a writer for a while. I consider myself a writer. And sometimes when you're writing, you can just get in the groove and it feels like it's just coming out of you. It's like as you type or as you write, it's just flowing. You didn't think of the story before. You didn't work it out in your mind. You just started typing or you just started writing and it happened. The ancient Greeks would have credited the muses for this, as if they were creating through you. Someone who has been very entrenched in the charismatic church, who is constantly wanting to hear from God, may see this as God speaking through them, or even God revealing lost memories to them, when in reality, they are simply writing a story.
So are there certain things that you have not been released to share?
Yeah. And specifically, there's certain things he hasn't even allowed me to remember because he wants me to trust him.
So then what's the difference between being allowed to remember something and creating a story in your head and convincing yourself it's a memory?
It's all coming back to me. Oh my God. I slept on an old dog bed stuffed with wigs.
Absolutely. You know, I remember when I first actually, when I first tried telling people about this or writing something down about it, all I could write, I took out my laptop and I could just write Jesus, because I was so just consumed. And like at first that was like my only memory was him. But then as I continued writing Sid and as I continued remembering, it came out of me. And the more conversations I've had, the more my memory has returned. And the topic that I really just know that we're going to get into, which is I really go into details on my book, 18 Days in Heaven, which the Lord actually just now released me to share. By the time they see this, it'll be up for pre-order where they can find it anywhere and everywhere. But I really go into the details of the keys to answered prayer and the keys to our words. Because Sid, he literally showed me from third heaven's perspective what the second heaven is like. And that's what I want to get into.
This also gives him permission to have inconsistencies and contradictions in his story. It allows him to say, oh, I couldn't remember my out-of-body experience when I said that I just remembered that the accident happened and that I was with Jesus. And then later, God revealed the rest of what happened.
Still so close to your experience. I suspect over time, your mind will continue to process, and there will be other things that will just kind of light bulb moments. I mean, it just, even talking to Randy Kay the other week, he's like, there was something I'd never shared from my heaven experience because I just didn't know what to do with it. And, his experience, I think, was around 14, 15 years ago. And God literally gave him a download about that the other week because it was something specific for his ministry right now. But up until this moment, he's like, I just is in the question mark column. I don't know what to do with it. And so that.
You ever listen to a kid tell a story? They're sitting there and they're talking and they're using a lot of and thens because they're creating this elaborate tale. It doesn't make a lot of sense, but you just smile and pretend to really get into the story and act shocked at every single new revelation in his story and every twist. That's what his stories feel like, especially when you've spent as many hours as I have spent watching his interviews. These are the ramblings of a child coming up with a story as he goes. And the interviewers are actually invested in these stories. They're actually excited about the nonsense he is saying.
So I'm brought into the third heaven, and this light that is suctioning me is not just a visible item. It's not like the light on my face right now. Like this light is a person.
The heavens open up and whoosh, they get sucked off.
Yeah, we all dream of getting sucked off.
And that's the term that you guys decided.
No, don't tell them, please.
Okay. The light was him.
So I knew immediately this light that I was being suctioned into wasn't just taking me to a place. I was becoming enveloped by this person.
Go up.
Get sucked off. Mm-hmm.
And this light had an appointment for me. He was waiting on me.
Love to see the big guy get sucked off.
It would be lovely.
I had completely misunderstood it. Heaven was nothing like I thought, nothing like I was taught of. And this person that I was brought before, the center of the city, was beyond words, beyond any picture or show or thing that I had ever seen on the earth.
I don't even say the city was a location. It wasn't a city like you think of down here on this earth. This city was a person.
There was another character that was just as important as the two of us. New York City.
So New York City is like another character.
Oh, yeah. So I describe this as the third heaven. Now, again, I am not claiming as if, again, I know all about heaven, but I just know this. Where he was is heaven. Heaven can't be described as just a location. Heaven can't just be described as a place. It can't even be understood as that. Heaven is him.
See, New York is such an important part of our lives. It's almost like another character in our story.
Right, you said that.
Because like left, right, in my peripheral, as I'm brought before him, I'm just aware that all of heaven speaks of him. I'm aware that all of heaven breathes him and sings him. Like it's beautiful. I didn't see all of heaven. I don't use that word as if I'm like some tourist or but I experienced heaven was Christ.
In fact, New York City was almost like a boyfriend to me.
Oh, right.
That is so good.
Very good.
That's very good. That's very cool.
You didn't feel any anxiety. Was it a sense of peace?
It wasn't just a sense of peace. It was peace himself. This was a person. This wasn't just a thing.
Everything is a person. We get it.
Where I was, but there was no more fear because his love was just full and complete. Like, so yeah, like there was this, like, before this time, as I'm brought before him, there was just this like awareness of like, oh my goodness, I don't stand a chance.
And then he goes on from that to being worried that Jesus was going to punish him for his sins.
I'm afraid. I'm greatly afraid because in this place, I have no right to be there. In my own works, I knew just the black and white truth of like my works. I knew I was not qualified to be there.
I'm such a holy and reverent place. This is the King of Kings. This isn't some normal Joe. This is him.
We're not just talking about, something else.
Eternity, Alpha and Omega. And my face is down because I'm just like, the list of my mistakes is going to get pulled up.
I'm done for. Like, I don't have a right to be in this place on my own ability.
I didn't originally see him face to face because my face was down because I was so concerned that the list of my mistakes was going to be pulled up. And I was done for. It was like black and white. Like, I have no hope.
My brother and I used to say that drowning in beer was like heaven, eh? Now he's not here and I got 2 soakers. This isn't heaven, this sucks.
My face is down and I'm bawling because I'm done for.
All of a sudden, Sid, he picks up my face. He picks up my head and he shows me his wounds. He says, Gabriel, the price is paid. Why are you concerned about that which does not exist?
That which does not exist. That's a very strange way to say that. If I were helping him write the story, I would give him notes on that and maybe say it a different way. Well, I can't do that because it's a true story. He wouldn't change what Jesus said if it was a true story.
And he looked me right in my eyes and he said, Gabriel, why are you concerned about the price in which I paid for?
That's somehow worse. Should we maybe try again?
There's nothing to be afraid of.
Nothing of which to be afraid.
But I just said that.
You can't end sentences with prepositions. Nothing of which to be afraid is the proper grammar.
With his head slightly turned, and he says, Gabriel, why are you concerned about that which I paid for?
Okay, that's better. It's a better way to phrase it, I guess. So I guess whoever did give him that note, good job. Maybe Jesus will hire you to be his speechwriter so he can get it better.
Right? But he picks up my face, he looks me in the eyes, and he says,
no head tilt this time. That's cool. I thought that was a nice touch, but whatever.
Gabriel, why are you concerned about that which is paid for?
Okay, slightly different phrasing, but same basic idea. And then he pretty much sticks to those two back and forth.
It said, Gabriel, why are you concerned about that which I paid for?
And he says, Gabriel, why are you concerned about that which I paid for?
He looks me in the eyes and he says, Gabriel, why are you concerned about that which is paid for?
I mean, again, I feel like if I heard Jesus speak, I would write that stuff down, but different strokes, different folks, all that stuff. But it's weird that he gets to heaven and all of a sudden he has this shift in attitude. Like all of a sudden he's super worried. When up to that point, he says that there was no fear at all.
There's a respect and there's a holiness that I know I know to whom I'm about to be with. There's a holiness, but there's not an ounce of fear. I knew it was all taken care of.
Then he got immediately worried right after all of that. He knows to whom he's about to be with and he knows it's taken care of, but then immediately he's afraid that it's not taken care of. And then he has his life review.
I wonder if you could walk us through that concept. What is a life review and what was yours like?
Yeah. For me, it was just like an awareness that a lot of things that I thought were super important did not come with me.
What do you mean?
What I mean by that is like none of the money or accolades or what people thought of me. It really didn't matter.
Yeah.
Yeah, he never thought that. Of course, he never thought that money and accolades came with him. He was an evangelical, charismatic Christian. He never thought that. Nobody thinks that. Nobody thinks they're the pharaohs who get to bring their things with them to the afterlife.
None of that existed. You know what did exist, though, in the life review? There was a moment at lunch when I was later in high school, and at the time I had been born again. And I sat with a Chinese student who was just sitting by himself. He didn't have anybody. He was on the floor. I just went and sat and talked to him.
I don't know if he needed to mention that he was Chinese.
She's Indian.
Answers, you don't have to say that.
Oh, I don't mind. Sarah shouldn't have to tell people she's Indian.
He could have just said there was a lonely kid.
In this life review, I didn't see myself just talking to him. I was talking to Jesus. He was there. He took it personal. See, so it's the little things.
That's actually really little. That's not a big deal at all. According to the Wayback Machine, he used to spend a lot of time talking about his hatred of woke culture, which really just means that he hates change and he wants people to continue to be marginalized. But God didn't call him out for that, I guess. He was just happy that he talked to a Chinese student once.
When I was in high school, I had sat with a student who was from China that didn't even speak English. He was sitting by himself on the floor.
Okay, it wasn't just that he was Chinese. It was that he didn't speak English. Could have just said that, but okay.
I didn't think much of it. I just thought, oh, I'd like to talk to him, see how he's doing. I just said hello. I didn't preach the gospel to him. I didn't give him like a 10-point sermon, but I just said hello to him and talked with him for a little bit. Well, this entire book was written just about that moment.
If you can't think of a nicer thing that you have done, then sit down for a second with someone who was confused about why you were sitting down with them. You might want to start doing some nicer things.
He records every moment, and it's glorious. There was a moment at lunch. I was sitting with a guy, and at the time when I was in high school, I was born again. I loved the Lord. I did. This guy was sitting alone. He could barely speak English. I went and sat with him.
Oh, okay. So he could speak English, just not a lot? Okay.
We didn't say much. We just kind of sat at lunch. I didn't think much of it. Later on, now when I was with Christ, there was this library. He recorded an entire book just about that moment.
Please tell me that you did nicer things than sit by a kid once.
It was the moments he saw in my life that he noticed. For example, in high school, I sat with a Chinese student who was all alone. He didn't have any friends at the time. I just sat with him. I was like, oh, yeah. I went and sat with him. I saw this moment. I didn't sit with him. I was sitting next to Jesus.
This is some real white savior stuff. I don't understand it.
Is this heaven? It's garbage.
Yeah. And it's just so impacted me what you just shared. It's like it's in the scriptures where Jesus says, if you do this for the least of these, you do it for me.
I'm not sure that Jesus was specifically saying that the Chinese are the least of these, but don't worry, he is not racist.
He didn't die on that cross just for black people. He didn't die on that cross just for Asians or yellow people or tan people.
The fuck did he say?
Yellow people or tan people.
He better mean scared people, because it's not like he learned about love for all mankind from this experience.
Like he's going to work it all out for our good. So even when failures come, just rejoice.
Yes.
Take joy. Like I was out in New York, me and my wife and our 7-month-old baby.
No, that's a very quick move from crying face to happy face. Very strange.
We flew, 3.5 hours. We get to the hotel. But then right before the show that I was scheduled to be on, we go to war with Iran. And it's like, okay, it's all canceled. Which I understood, though. Most guys would be like, I can't believe we got it canceled. It's not going to work out. I just said, no, it's all good. Thanks for having us out. It's all good.
I mean, I know he's not saying that the war with Iran is all good, but it does kind of come across that the worst thing about the war in Iran is that he didn't get to go on a television program.
Great. And we think we're going to be on this major show. But then an hour later, we go to war with Iran and it gets canceled. And we just flown out there with my wife and baby, our little 6-month-old baby.
Oh my goodness.
And we were just in the hotel.
Deal.
Yeah. There's a lot of effort. We canceled things to get there. And now they're just like, oh, it's canceled.
So does he recognize that the attacks on Iran have meant that a lot of people, including a lot of children, have died? I don't necessarily think that he is the victim here for not being able to go on television.
But instead of being like, how dare you? No, I just said, I totally understand. And we rejoiced, and we ended up having cool encounters with a taxi driver and then another guy. And
God worked it all out.
God worked it all out, except that we're still having huge issues because of the Strait of Hormuz, and there's been a lot of rippling repercussions across the globe, and economically it's been very hard, and gas prices are very expensive as a result of all this, which affects the cost of everything. But no, it's true. He did have a nice little vacation, so yes, God worked it out, even though he was inconvenienced about the TV show.
And we rejoiced.
What did he look like?
He was about 5'11", 6 feet. He met me eye to eye. He was darker toned skinned, closer to like Middle Eastern, yet eternity at the same time. So he was 33 yet eternal.
Okay, so the two things we're going to hear a lot are it wasn't blank, it was a person, and it wasn't blank, it was the length of eternity or something to do with eternity. He's going to use that a lot.
Sid, as I'm seeing Jesus for who he truly is, he was about 6 feet tall, but yet he expanded the lengths of eternity. He was dark yet light at the same time. That's why it's so hard when people say, what did Jesus look like? What race was he? It's like, dude.
He's every race.
He's every race.
Closer to like Middle Eastern.
He was about 5'11", 6 feet. But, can I tell you something? He met me eye to eye, Liz. And I actually believe for those who maybe are on the shorter spectrum or taller spectrum, he'll meet you eye to eye.
So then I don't really understand why he would ever say his height in the first place, but cool. Whatevs skis.
I would look to the left, to the right, up, down. There was no escape. I literally felt like a soldier free falling into an ocean of blue liquid love that had no floor to it.
Those words don't mean anything together.
Did he have a face you could see?
Yes, but can I tell you something? You look into his eyes, good luck trying to look at anything else.
Yeah.
Closer to like Middle Eastern.
You have nice eyes, but I could look away if I wanted to.
You can't look away from his eyes.
Yeah.
People are like, tell me all about the other parts of heaven. And I tell them, no, you missed the point.
So we missed the point if we expect him to tell us about heaven because he was looking at Jesus. But anyways, here he is telling us what heaven looks like.
Left, right, in my peripheral, I'm aware there's flowers, there's leaves on trees, there's waters, there's streets, there's libraries, there's houses, there's monuments, but every detail you even look at it, as the leaves would blow, they would sing, "Worthy is the Lamb."
Whoa. People are like, tell me all about the other parts of heaven. And I tell them, no. Flower, or look at a beauty, or look at the golden, there was these golden streets, there was these gemstones, there was these monuments, and left, right, up, down, you're just captivated by love. People are like, tell me all about the other parts of heaven. And I tell them, no. And there's this city that isn't just an urban location again, but this city had everything, mountains, beaches, mansions. People are like, tell me all about the other parts of heaven. And I tell them, no.
It talks in the Bible, my Father's house has many mansions. Did you actually see a mansion?
Oh, there's many. But Sid, I saw the mansion.
What's that?
Jesus.
Yeah, Jesus.
Him. Sid.
I haven't used that clip in a while. John 14 verse 2 says, "In my Father's house there are many mansions." Well, it says that in the King James Version. Pretty much every other version says, "In my Father's house are many rooms." Because why would a house have a mansion in it? Is it a translation issue maybe? Does house actually mean heaven here? No, because it's not about the architecture of heaven. That's not what this verse is. It was probably meant more as a metaphor. It was saying that God has room for you in his house, in his kingdom. But when the King James Version was written, the word mansion didn't have the same meaning that it has today. At the time, mansion meant room or dwelling place. And even though most modern translations say, "In my Father's house there are many rooms," so many modern Christians still talk about heaven having mansions, like giant houses, because they still love material wealth, and their goal in getting to heaven is to be materially wealthy when they get to heaven. And as much as they talk about heaven being with Christ or continuing to worship Christ, they still talk about the mansions a lot.
Yeah, because we really have misrepresented him. And again, this isn't me introducing some special heaven as if it's like a tourism spot, or like, even in my book, I don't describe heaven as all the items and as if it's some like all about the physical things or like all about the gold and mansions.
Yeah.
Like, no, it's him.
Mm-hmm. Wow.
And so it really actually.
And so the mansions specifically, there's things in your mansion that you didn't even know you liked and like there was a part of you, but they come to life.
Because this version of heaven only exists in Gabe's head. Now, I'm not saying he's necessarily lying to us. Could be. He might be. But he also might just be lying to himself and convincing himself that this happened. But either way, it only exists in his head.
So did you see Gabriel? Like the one we know from the book?
I don't remember any angels. Can I tell you why? They were there. Angels were there. But there's actually a reverence. They don't even want you to look at them.
People ask me details about angels. I wasn't even allowed to look at them. I don't even have a memory of what they look like.
So he can't tell you what the angels look like, but he can also tell you what the angels looked like.
Did you see seraphims?
It was so fascinating because as you ask about seraphims, I remember they were there. They had a shine to them that was glorious. And I won't go into too much detail because honestly, I just am up front. I don't remember the full details of the seraphim, just being up front with you. But I just remember the shine. There was a glory, there was a shine, like a reflection. It was glorious. It spoke at the same time as it was visible.
Did you see eyes, eyeballs?
Absolutely. Eyes were... What was so interesting about the eyes in heaven and on the seraphim, they were everywhere, yet in one place at the same time. They weren't in one part of, like they were throughout the being. It was fascinating.
People ask me details about angels. I wasn't even allowed to look at them. I don't even have a memory of what they look like.
Did you see eyes, eyeballs?
Absolutely.
So like I said, Gabe was an influencer before this accident ever happened. Ugh. Is nut the Christian word for that? I thought sex was sacred or something, but I guess nut is the word we're using. So what kind of Christian was he before all of this?
My guest, Gabe Poirot, was raised in a Christian home, but he was not, please get this now, he was not an experiential Christian.
I mean, I've already said a few times that he was a charismatic evangelical Christian, but maybe I'm wrong. So right here, Sid Roth said that he wasn't an experiential Christian, which means that he didn't believe in modern day supernatural things like speaking in tongues, prophecy, healing, and Gabe never corrected him. But maybe he missed it. Maybe he didn't hear him say that. He was on a TV show. That's probably a very stressful thing.
So it was October 25th, 2021. And before this date, I certainly had known a lot about the Bible. I learned a lot about faith. I learned a lot about God, right? And, I had made a decision to place my faith in Christ, but I describe it like this. There's a big difference between knowing about someone versus knowing them. And I will also clarify, people always ask me, well, did you know the Lord before? And I was born again. I truly had placed my faith in him, but I did not have an awareness of the spiritual world.
Nothing wrong with my life at the time. And also, I didn't really believe in a lot of supernatural things. I almost would laugh when I would hear of supernatural stories because it was like, oh, that's interesting. Nice to hear about. But
so I was curious about how much of this was true. Did he really not have an experiential faith? Did he really kind of laugh at the supernatural? So I looked at his YouTube shorts and I found this one.
When I was a junior in high school, I witnessed with my own eyes a real-life miracle. Watch this video until the end to find out the miracle that Jesus did in my public high school that will shock you. My friend's name was Michael, and he had broken his foot. He had stuck his foot in a mower. I know it's crazy. He walked into our Bible study one morning, and when I was a junior in high school, we all gathered together and we prayed in Jesus' name. And sure enough, as soon as we said amen, we told him to move around his foot. He moved it around, and guess what? There was no pain. This is the photo that I took with my phone, the phone right here. This happened in my life. He ran around the room, and this is a photo of him taking the boot off of his foot, putting it back in his backpack. He took a shoe out of his backpack, and he walked out the room completely healed. Amen.
If I had that experience, and I believe completely that I saw that actually happen, I don't know that I would then go around and say that I would kind of laugh at the supernatural. So I emailed him about it. Well, I emailed him about something else, but then when I had his attention, I asked him about this. But I'll get into what I emailed him about in a bit. Thank you so much for that, replying to the previous question I asked. And then I guess my last question, and I'll leave you alone. How come on Sid Roth, you said that before the accident, you didn't believe in the supernatural, and you thought it was pretty silly? But then, when you look at your YouTube channel, you posted a video before the accident about having seen a miracle of your friend's foot being healed. Now, yes, I messed up there, because he didn't say that on Sid Roth. He didn't say it was silly. But the thing is that I had been watching a lot of interviews, like I said. At this point, I was away from my computer. I was emailing on my phone. I saw that he responded to a previous question, and I wanted to ask him about this. So I mentioned the wrong video, and I got the wording wrong. Eventually, I did correct it. But he responded respectfully, as evidenced by the attached transcripts analysis of the full Sid Roth interview. I never said that before the accident I didn't believe in the supernatural or that I thought it was pretty silly. To address the broader question, before my accident and testimony, many aspects of the supernatural and near-death experiences seemed unfamiliar or unusual to me. However, I did believe that God could and did perform miracles, which is why I publicly shared my experience, such as my friend's healing prior to the accident. My accident and subsequent experiences drastically deepened and expanded my understanding of the supernatural from everything I primarily believed intellectually to something I had personally experienced and encountered. Those experiences did not create my belief in the supernatural from nothing. Rather, they profoundly strengthened and transformed my perspective. And then he shows the analysis, and he was right. He did not say that on Sid Roth, so I sent him this email. I do apologize. I have been watching a lot of your interviews in the last few days, and I got mixed up. Sid Roth said you weren't an experiential Christian at the start of your interview, but the quote I was thinking of is this.
Also, I didn't really believe in a lot of supernatural things. I almost would laugh when I would hear of supernatural stories.
Meanwhile, you love talking about the supernatural on social media, and based on the way people talked in your CBN video, you attended a charismatic church that really believed in the supernatural.
He remained in a coma for 18 days until Ginger, a close family friend, came to the hospital and prayed over him.
I looked at him and I said, Gabe, you know my voice. You know when I pray. I know you can hear me. I know you're unconscious, but I know that you know I'm here. I'm going to pray that you wake up.
Testimony to see the power of what happens when you have a community of people who genuinely believe in the power of prayer and genuinely believe in the power of God, and that it is his desire for him to heal people. And it was strengthening for the whole community, but ultimately, we were all very strong in our belief system to begin with. It was like the whole community came together, had a worship night that night. We live streamed it. We, on all of our social medias, we just blasted it to the world and really felt like the whole community, the whole Christian community, extended community across the world came together to pray for Gabe.
And then a few days later, I went to pull up that video again of his friend's foot being healed, and I noticed that a lot of his videos are gone. So I asked him about that too. Did you delete the video about your friend's foot being healed? I've been streamlining my YouTube channel to have far less shorts. I'm not hiding anything. Way too many viral short form videos, and the algorithm on those I've noticed have tanked. And as someone who wants to keep videos simple and updated during my spare time, I'm constantly going back and taking a ton down. I've been constantly deleting shorts and videos for the past 3 years. I did recently take that one down and many more from the timeline, both before and after my accident, because I still have too many shorts on my channel. So maybe he doesn't have to market himself to sponsors. Gabe has for a long time had way more subscribers than I do and probably ever will have. So maybe this just doesn't matter to him, and maybe he doesn't have to market himself to sponsors. But When I was with my old manager, I mentioned at one point that I was thinking about moving all my old podcast episodes to a second channel, and he immediately shut that down and said, do not do that, because when you do that, you lose all those watch time hours. Your stats go down so quickly, and it is the same thing for shorts. That will mess up your algorithm. So, unless you want to delete a video because you no longer agree with it, it really never makes any sense to delete a video from your YouTube channel. But that's up to him. He is allowed to do that. That being said, I don't shy away from the topic at all. Before my accident, I believed in miracles and had seen verified miracles, like that foot testimony, but never had a supernatural, personal, near-death experience outside of my body. Yeah, most people haven't. I consider those two types of miracles in different categories. Why? It's the same God, but okay. When I said I didn't really believe in a lot of supernatural things, I wasn't saying that before my accident I didn't believe in miracles at all, or that I didn't believe in the supernatural at all. I was speaking in the context of not having personal experience with an out-of-body NDE. Bullshit. That's bullshit. And really what I was saying there in that interview was how much more personal and in-depth my faith would go after the 18 days in heaven. Before my NDE, 18 days in heaven, I had seen miracles with my physical eyes, but during the NDE and now after, as I testify of the difference, I speak about how my spiritual eyes have opened even more and my faith is deepened, and I am less skeptical of spiritual NDE out-of-body experiences. But of course he wasn't talking about NDEs before that. He would have just said that. It sounded to me like he was saying that he really didn't believe in the supernatural, and he was trying to convince the people watching the video that he didn't believe in the supernatural beforehand. Or
also, I didn't really believe in a lot of supernatural things. I almost would laugh when I would hear of supernatural stories.
It sounds to me like he was saying that he didn't really believe in the supernatural at all before. Because in Christianity, what makes testimony better is a 180 turnaround. Those of us who grew up in the church, those of us who went to Sunday school every Sunday, they went to youth group every Wednesday, we were always so jealous of those people that got to say that God delivered them from drugs. Those people had a good testimony. The people who used to be in a gang but were now preaching for the Lord, those people had a good testimony. And he's using that principle here. He has to make the story better by saying that it changed his opinion on the supernatural. Now watch this.
For you, had you read many books or been exposed to these sorts of experiences prior to your own experience?
And remember, he said prior to your own experience. So he knows he's talking about before he had this experience.
Yeah, so I had heard of, or I remember hearing of two encounters, really, at least. One was Jesse Duplantis. I watched his testimony of heaven multiple times because it was like an hour and 20 minutes. It was when he spoke at the church in Houston, I believe. I could be wrong though. But I would just go back and watch it over and over again. I was like, wow. And I remember when I first tuned into it, like clicking it, I was like, is this for real? Like, is this the real deal? Like, what is going on here? And then as I heard it, I knew Jesus was real. One, but also like his encounter of Jesus was accurate.
That doesn't really sound like a guy who was skeptical of NDEs. I don't know why you would believe Jesse Duplantis about anything. We're talking about this guy.
I really believe that if Jesus was physically on the earth today, he wouldn't be riding a donkey.
Duplantis now wants an upgrade to this $54 million Dassault 7X that comes with lavish interiors. Only the wealthiest people in the world can afford such luxury.
So for you that don't think I should have that plane, God told me to have that plane.
And he's saying he believed this about heaven?
King David was bringing me around. So we were talking. He's a very fine man. And I ran into Jonah. And I went down the street of the prophets. I know where Brother Hagin's living. CJ, I know the houses he in. They look like St. Charles Street in New Orleans and Manhattan back in the 1800s, where they had block mansions. And if it's the only city left in the United States that has block mansions is the city of New Orleans. For you that travel, if you want to say, it's on St. Charles Street. They call it the Garden District. Go down there, every block is covered with a mansion. And that's where the prophets lived and the patriarchs. It's amazing to see that. And David said, would you like a condo in paradise? I said, can I have one? He said, you can have a mansion in paradise. Anything you ask is given. All desires are met. Every desire you can think of, God does. And you know what, ladies and gentlemen? It's the same way here if you'll believe it.
And also I read the Heaven is for Real book talking about the little boy who I think like I don't know, a little bit of time was on the bed in the hospital room, and then he went to heaven and saw his miscarried sister that he didn't even know existed. And yeah, those are the two that I'd heard some others as well. I'd heard a little bit about Kevin Zadai as well. Thought that was so amazing. And but yeah, in general, I had thought of it and I'd been like, wow, that's so cool. And Kat Kerr. Sorry, they're all coming to me as you asked me that. And Kat Kerr. But
this Kat Kerr?
And all of a sudden, the trees literally uprooted themselves, came over, put their branches around me. All the trees had faces in this forest, and they all had personalities. Even the fruit trees would come up and offer you fruit off of their branches. It was.
Did you say something?
She was hungry. She was hungry.
This person's was like in this forest that was a tributary, and they were fishing from their deck. I did not know this person. I knew their name, but I didn't know them personally. And so I saw this beautiful place. He had a dog with him. He had a dog with him that was like salt and pepper colored, laying next to him while he was fishing. The dog was talking to him.
Wow.
Like talking, like
in other words, they could understand each other's language or whatever.
Yes, he was actually having conversation like in English with this person who had taken care of him. And so
here's Gabe talking about where the marks on Jesus' hands were.
People don't know this, but actually the Bible describes that Greek word for hand wasn't just talking about hand. It's actually also including the wrist. Do you know this? He was actually crucified closer to the wrist.
Yeah.
And those who know Roman crucifixion will tell you that.
That's right.
But it wasn't 2 inches wide. It was the depth of eternity. And it had a name. Gabriel.
Yes, we know. Everything is either Jesus or it's the depths of eternity. We understand.
They weren't in his hands. You know, like everyone thinks they're in like the middle of his hands. They're not in the middle of his hands.
His wounds had a voice. They were below his wrists. Below his hands, in his wrists.
And actually, his wounds, people think they're like right in the middle of his hand. They're actually closer to his wrist.
But here he's being very specific about the location of the wounds on Jesus to try to show that this version of heaven didn't come from his brain, but it actually happened because it goes against what you would expect. But the whole nails through the wrist thing isn't actually based on archaeological evidence or ancient records. It's based on realizing that if you were to nail somebody through their palm and have them hang there, the nail would rip through the flesh and they would fall off. Now, there is some archaeological evidence that nails were used through the ankle, but typically ropes were used to keep people on the cross, because the point of the crucifixion is to keep people alive and keep them suffering for as long as possible. And if you were to put a giant nail through somebody's wrist, they are more likely to die quicker because famously there's a huge artery there that sometimes people die when they lose too much blood through it. The most likely explanation for why the Bible talks about Jesus' hands and feet being pierced is because they were trying to make it work with Psalm 22. So they added the piercings of the hand and feet. But Gabe was very clear. The nails actually went through his wrist. But remember, he also said that he liked Heaven is for Real.
And also I read the Heaven is for Real book talking about the little boy who I think like I don't know, a little bit of time was on the bed in the hospital room, and then he went to heaven and saw his miscarried sister that he didn't even know existed.
Well, Dad, Jesus has markers. Dad, Jesus has markers. I didn't know what he meant. So I finally asked the right question. Colton, where are Jesus' markers? And he drops his toys down, he stands up, and he just points, Dad, they were right here. He takes his fingers, points to the palms, then he bends over and touches the tops of his feet. And looks up to me. That's where Jesus' markers were, Dad.
Okay, first of all, why would a kid call it markers? And why did Jesus show Colton the wrong place? The wounds are definitely supposed to be in the wrist, right? So at least one of these stories, either Colton's or Gabe's, has to be wrong. I mean, it's probably both, but at least one has to be. And that's the case with all NDEs. Sure, there are thousands of NDE stories, but each one of them is so drastically different. I mean, I guess Jesus could just show you what you were expecting to see. But if that's the case, then what was the point of Gabe emphasizing that it was the wrist so often? And Gabe uses the fact that there are thousands of NDEs as an argument all the time for why they're probably true.
There's a lot of skepticism about my testimony and whether or not this could even be a real thing happening to thousands of people all across the globe. In fact, 1 in 25 people have had a near-death experience.
But each one is so drastically different.
There's babies who have sadly been aborted. There's also babies who have been miscarried, and there's so much sadness there. But I want to tell you, mothers did not lose their babies. Their babies were moved, and there's actually a nursery in heaven. And this nursery is where Jesus Christ himself looks after those babies, but he doesn't raise the babies without the moms. And actually the babies are waiting for their moms.
Seeing this toddler, I said, God, how is that possible? He says, they continue to grow in heaven, but there's no time. It's eternity. So 48 years, and here my child, our child, is a toddler.
If you've had an abortion or you've had a miscarriage, your babies are alive. They're alive. And listen to me, if you recently had a miscarriage or whatever, and you don't live much longer, let's say you pass away, you teach your children the oracle of God. They can't wait to see their parents. They can't wait to see their mother and father. Now, if you wait a long time, there are people teaching them, as you grow older, then they grow faster than a normal child, like these sweet girls, but they're being taught the oracle of God. But let's say you had a miscarriage 4 years ago, 5 years ago, and you went home to be with the Lord or something like that. You would teach your own child the oracle of God. And they're waiting to see you.
Put myself down and looked at him and says, what do you mean you have two sisters? No, I have two sisters. You had a baby die in your tummy. And I just looked at him like, well, how do you know you have two sisters? Well, she told me. And then he proceeded to describe her.
She looked like Cassie, but she had brown hair. And first time when she saw me, she just came up and hugged me.
We knew this was true because he said, she kept hugging me. She wouldn't stop hugging me, Mom, and I didn't like that.
Well, I'm not really the hugging type.
You met children too.
Yeah.
Are they going to grow older? Are they?
Yes, like if you were miscarried or if you died as a kid, what you do is you will still grow to your prime. But then once you hit your late 20s, early 30s.
I'm actually in my prime right now at 45, so I don't know what he's talking about.
You stop and you stay at that age.
And as someone myself who 4 years ago was in actually a very similar encounter for 18 days, I was in a coma. And actually, I can tell you that the timetables on heaven and earth are very different indeed. And I want to mention as well, Colton talked about how if there's a baby or someone's miscarried or there's a kid, how they do grow to the age of in their young 20s, that everyone there is in their prime years. Here's what's beautiful though. The Lord saves all those babies that have been miscarried. He saves those babies for the moms so that when the moms come to heaven, if they know him as well, if they believe on him, the moms will be able to raise those kids as well. The Lord.
So I guess Colton's mom is destined for hell then? But the thing is, his story about the nursery is very close to an interview he did last year.
And unless you've experienced, you don't get it. And so when they were like, this is heaven's nursery. And I just was like, in my head, I had this idea that when you went to heaven, everybody was just kind of hanging out everywhere, you know? I had no idea that there were
Purpose.
purpose in certain areas and this and that. And so, you know, I'm walking around and I'm looking at these babies and I just start crying. And I'm like, they're beautiful. They're beautiful. I said, oh, I went like this. Oh, I just don't understand why I had to suffer. And they were like, come over here and sit down. And Jesus comes in and beautiful. But you know, I wasn't wigged out. You know, you would think, oh, I saw Jesus. No, it was just love. And it was like, it was just the two of us. And we were sitting in these rocking chairs and he's just sitting there, you know, how you would picture your relative just sitting there, you know, spending time together. And he had one of the angels bring over one of the babies. And he says, I want you to hold the baby. He says, you were really upset at me because you didn't get to hold your babies. And he says, I know a mother's heart. I know a mother's heart. They have to touch it. They have to feel it. And there's just that connection that you have to have it.
And you'll notice that he's sitting in awe of her story, but he wasn't jumping up and down and saying, yes, yes, that's what I saw. So this is how I responded to Gabe. That's interesting. As someone who proudly considers himself a skeptic, I can't help but wonder why you wouldn't be more skeptical of other people's NDEs. I've lived in Toronto for 15 years now, so I know the city pretty well. If somebody started telling a story about being in Toronto, and they said something like, I was at the CN Tower and then I took a 5-minute walk to Casa Loma, that would immediately sound wrong to me because I know that those two places are very far away from each other. But someone who doesn't know the city at all wouldn't understand the problem with that story. I've heard many NDEs, and the thing is, so many of them don't align at all and often contradict each other. So if someone were there, if somebody actually visited heaven, you'd think they would hear all these stories and be extremely skeptical because they knew what it was actually like. But that's just me. But the fact that thousands of people have had NDEs, but they contradict each other, kind of makes it seem like the only logical explanation is what scientists have been saying. As you lose oxygen in your brain, as you are expecting to die, your brain starts to create a story for you. Scientists are now starting to see that your brain is working long after your heart stops. You have thoughts long after you're quote-unquote dead, which should sound really comforting, knowing that even if you don't believe in God anymore, your loved ones who were believers, when they died, were able, even just for a moment, to be in heaven, to feel the warm embrace of their Savior, to have that feeling of being reunited with somebody they loved. All that pain that they were experiencing is gone, and they got to experience pure joy, even for a moment. Almost like our biology has our back. And the thing is, not all NDEs even have Jesus in them. Like this incredible story you'll have to read the subtitles for.
मैं आपको एक सच्ची घटना सुनाता हूँ। हुआ क्या कि मेरे दाहिने हाथ की हड्डी टूट गई थी और मुझे बुखार आने लगा। बुखार के 3 दिन बाद तक भी मैंने महसूस किया 3 दिन बाद कि मेरी हड्डी तो ठीक हो रही है, मेरा बुखार ठीक नहीं हो रहा। और मेरा बुखार ठीक ना होने की वजह से क्या थी कि मुझे प्रॉपर इलाज नहीं मिल पाया और एक दिन मैं बिस्तर पर गिर गया। तभी मैंने देखा कि 4 यमदूत मुझे खींचे लिए जा रहे हैं। यमदूत ये भगवान यमराज के सेवक होते हैं और भगवान यमराज वो मौत के भगवान होते हैं। क्या हुआ कि मैं जब वहाँ गया, मैंने देखा कि वहाँ पे बहुत बड़ा सा एक दरवाज़ा है। उस दरवाजे के अंदर चला गया तो मैंने वहाँ जाकर के देखा कि उस दरवाजे के अंदर मेरे माता पिता बैठे थे जिनका स्वर्गवास कई साल पहले हो गया था, और वहीं पे भगवान यमराज भी बैठे थे। वो एक मोटा सा व्यक्ति था और उसके सामने बहुत सारी किताबें पड़ी हुई थी। तो जैसे ही यमराज ने मुझे देखा तो एकदम भड़क गए, गुस्से में लाल पीले हो गए और यमदूतों को कहने लगा, अरे कम वक्तों, इसे क्यों यहाँ उठा लाए? हाँ? और बस फिर क्या था, उन्होंने हंटर उठा लिया और यमदूतों को पीटना शुरू कर दिया। जब वो यमदूतों की पिटाई कर रहे थे तभी एक हंटर मेरी पीठ पे भी लगा बड़ा जोर का। मगर भाई मैं फिर भी खुश था, कम से कम मुझे मेरा शरीर तो वापस मिल गया। अब मैं अपने बच्चों को देख सकता था, मगर मेरी पीठ में अब भी दर्द था।
That Yamadut story is way cooler than a nursery of aborted babies. It's almost like our culture and already held beliefs affect what happens. Like, for example, evangelicals love talking about abortion, so why not weave it into your narrative?
That's why every human life is a miracle, starting in the conception, not when you're born. It's because every human has the breath of God.
Okay, so you don't breathe in the womb, and the Bible does say that life begins with your first breath.
The touch of God, it made in his image. And so when you attack life, you're attacking the very heartbeat of God. That's why he takes it so serious.
Actually, scientists have documented this. At conception, they literally have photographed a light that bursts out. And the reason why that light bursts at conception is because we are the light of the light. We are spirits of the spirit. And he didn't examine me to decide whether or not he loved me. He didn't even think about it. He loved me because that's who he was.
So yes, at conception, there is what they call a zinc spark, because a bunch of zinc is released and there's a bit of a reaction. The funny thing is that this happens in mammals, and it was first observed in mice, which I guess means that mice are just as important to God as people are, and that mice have souls, I guess. And we also know that that spark is zinc. So I guess he's saying that God's light is zinc, and maybe that God is made out of zinc?
Zinc, come back. Zinc, zinc, zinc. What? Oh, it was all a dream. Thank goodness I still live in a world of telephones, car batteries, handguns.
But this is what he does over and over again. He brings up a current hot button issue as if it's also God's hot button issue, as if God was also swayed by the political strategist who decided what to get people angry about this month.
The Jesus I encountered, he is love, but he actually wasn't nice.
Really?
He wasn't tolerant.
If there's anything that evangelicals hate, it's tolerance. But apparently the guy who told the Good Samaritan story, the guy who met with the woman at the well, the guy who is credited as saying he who was without sin cast the first stone, that guy wasn't nice? That guy wasn't tolerant?
That's fascinating. Tell me more about that.
He's not messing around.
Okay.
He's not just the lamb. He's the lion.
Wow.
Yes, he's the lamb that was slain from the foundations of the world, right? Like, yes, he's the lamb. But actually, when he comes back, he's going to be on his white horse.
Yeah.
And he's going to be a lion on that horse. He's not even, quote unquote, nice. Sid, he doesn't play games.
Not even Skippo? That's a fun game for everyone.
He's a man. He means what he says.
I play for keeps. I play for keeps.
He's not soft or feminine. We present him that way a lot of times, but that wasn't the Jesus I encountered.
This is a very modern talking point in evangelical Christianity. They have been told over and over again that the reason that church attendance has been dwindling is because men don't want to go to church. If they can get men back to church, they will save the church because men will also bring their families. And they decided that the reason men don't go to church anymore is because church is too feminine and Jesus has been shown to be too feminine. He's portrayed as caring for little sheep or with children or washing feet, but actually he was a really manly man. So they talk about how tough he is. And obviously it's a reaction to feminism and for men being called out for their toxic behavior. So because this is a popular talking point, his version of Jesus is a manly, masculine, non-feminine man because it's coming from his brain.
Like a man.
Why does it sound like he really likes men here? Like he really wants to grease up some beefcakes?
Because we're going to grease up these beefcakes.
No!
Like, good luck trying to bring your opinion to him.
Mm-hmm.
So I guess being a man means not listening to other people's opinions. Being a man is being stubborn. I mean, that explains a lot about a lot of men.
This is why kids are told that they can just be whatever, or there's so many multiple dimensions of identities now. And it's because an AI now and what they're doing with fertilization and just like introducing certain crazy things when it comes to the start of life.
It's really funny when people like conspiracy theorists and people in very specific religious sects start referencing things that they think are such common knowledge that they don't even have to explain it. Like earlier, when he talked about seeing demonic activity on social media. And now I'm talking about all the crazy stuff with AI and fertilization. What? Sorry, man, we do not know what you're saying here.
AI is really crazy, but it's the fallen angels that are interbreeding again with humanity.
Did you ever get any sense when you were in heaven that there's another planet?
But basically, I think that his main point is that the reason there are different gender expressions than he is used to seeing is because there are different dimensions, and also because fallen angels interbred with humans in the Bible. So in his version of things, God showed him that trans people exist because they are part demon. Again, obviously taken from the Nephilim myth in the Old Testament. And this is something he's been obsessed with for a while.
Actually weren't completely wiped out because, still Goliath existed after the flood, said the giants of those days, and that was still after the day of Noah. So there is traces of Nephilim still to this day.
Top of the hour, just to kind of make the show fun. What are your thoughts on Bigfoot? And then you can get into your story.
Yeah, let's hear your story after that.
Well, the reason why I laugh is because I think people have been so transfixed on one figure specifically, which is a joke to me because especially after I died, left my body, and passed through the second and on to the third heaven, I saw way more than just like one Bigfoot creature, like way more than just one creature.
He saw so much on that quick trip through the sludge. Honestly, he should start working with law enforcement. There's no way he didn't witness some crimes.
Yeah.
And way more influential than even just one story. So yeah, I don't discount at all that there is at least a Bigfoot out there. I already know there's many. So I
don't doubt that there is a Bigfoot out there because I know there are many. Okay. That sounds like the rambling of somebody who's making stuff up as they go.
Sometimes I'll start a sentence and I don't even know where it's going. I just hope I find it along the way. Like an improv conversation. Improvisation.
So they're hanging out in the second heaven, though.
No, they definitely manifest in the first a lot more than people realize.
Okay.
So it's not like impossible to find.
But different than like a Yeti and a Sasquatch, and we're talking about.
You're talking about typology of Bigfoot here.
Yeah, I mean, if we're going to put different names and labels on it, I'm not the expert on the names, but I will just tell you they can play with you as well because they know familiar personalities, and so they're going to play with names. Like there'll be one that plays multiple at the same time, right? And so I won't be boxed in when I describe things sometimes.
Sure.
And people get annoyed by that because they're like,
fine.
just tell me. But I'm like, no, you don't understand.
Here it is. My philosophy is basically this, and this is something that I live by, and I always have, and I always will. Don't ever, for any reason, do anything to anyone for any reason, ever.
Actually, I've gotten intel from a family member of a certain intelligence person that has told me they have bodies in centers, bodies of supernatural creatures.
So when I saw that clip right there where he talks about the government facility, I started to have doubts about whether or not I should release this video. I actually messaged a couple friends and told them that I wasn't sure if I was going to go forward with this, if I should scrap the video altogether, because obviously this is somebody who is not well. And I don't want to do a video where I'm just dunking on someone who's not doing well mentally. That's not what I'm about. I took the rest of the day off that day because I wasn't sure what I should do. He's clearly lost all touch with reality. He's talking about giants. He's talking about seeing Bigfoots, big feet. He claims to have government intel about the storage of supernatural creatures. What do you do with that? But the thing is, so many people believe in conspiracy theories these days. Of course, there's going to be more and more people believing these kinds of things. And it's only going to get worse if people like him are not called out for it. I talk all the time about how religion affects people's actions. I talk about how people's beliefs can cause someone who would otherwise be a great parent to disown their child for being gay or trans. I talk about how people try to deny proven science all the time because it doesn't fit their already held beliefs. A person can believe that a faith healer can heal them, and I don't just assume they're suffering from a serious mental health crisis. I assume that they're being manipulated. He already had magical thinking, and then he probably went down some rabbit hole about cryptids, some rabbit hole about the Nephilim. He tied it all into his faith, and now that's just part of it. He was also manipulated. In a world where people are believing more and more nonsense. And I do hope he can snap out of it, for sure. But I also can't sit here and pretend that someone believing that their friend's foot was healed or that you died and went to heaven is somehow less out there than the government facility of supernatural creatures. But maybe I'm just a doubter.
But there had to have been doubters who said, there's no way that happened. What did you say to the doubters?
Yeah, well, I said, well, open your Bible to the book of Revelation, because it was actually John's encounter with Jesus in heaven that he then was sent back and wrote all about, right? And so
I actually doubt that the book of Revelation is in any way based on facts or was written by the Apostle John. So that doesn't really help me.
We also know Daniel and Ezekiel and Isaiah. Like there's, biblically speaking, actually, there's a very biblical precedent for having encounters with Christ and telling the story. And
we don't really know, per se, because those are also just stories.
You're made fun of?
Oh, of course. People laugh at me all the time, and
what? People laugh at the guy who said that Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe actually happened to him?
People, I mean, it's wild how quickly they just, even the Christians will dismiss this.
Huh.
And those who claim to be spiritual will dismiss this so fast, yet here it is. And
this is kind of sinister here. Putting quotes around Christians when he talks about the Christians who don't believe him.
The Christians will dismiss this.
It almost sounds like his standard for whether somebody is a true Christian or not is whether or not they believe his story. And when I noticed this, I had to email him again. I know you're probably sick of hearing from me. I promise I will send you my completed video when it's done. It should be out sometime this week. I do have another question for you if you don't mind. In this video, at around 4:14, you put air quotes around Christian when you talk about people who don't believe your story. Is the implication here that people who doubt what you are saying aren't true Christians? That true salvation lies in believing you? And he responded, salvation is in Christ alone. Jesus Christ is the way, the truth, and the life. My testimony is to point to him. Okay, but why does it seem like you are trying to dismiss people who disagree with you as not true Christians in this clip? And it looks like that's where our conversation finally ended.
You mentioned again the skeptics, and there are a number of people who have tried to make exposure videos.
I don't really do photography videos. I just use like the automatic settings on my camera, and then I put a LUT on it sometimes after the fact. But that's pretty much all I do. Honestly, I don't really know a lot about exposure. People assume that I'm into photography, but I just use like different settings and stuff that make it easier.
TikTokers and things like this, saying, "Oh, this is a lie," or they say it wasn't a lie, but you just have a dream.
Oh, exposing his lies. Right. Yeah, I do that. And again, I'm at the point where I think he definitely is lying. I don't think he ever had an NDE or even a dream that he had an NDE. But again, the only question I have is he also lying to himself? Has he also convinced himself that these stories he made up are actually revelations about what happened?
Like you had a cool dream, basically. It's not real. What documented medical evidence do you have that you had a near-death experience?
Yeah, well, I can show all the topograms, and then it shows my cracked skull as well. And so I also have the evidence of the doctor and the documentary we did in the hospital, and that's on CBN News. We filmed there, so we have direct doctor testimonials, as well as, again, the brain. If you look at the topogram of the graph that I'm showing, any doctor will tell you that brain is not supposed to have a memory of the full life when they come back.
So there's a huge difference between not supposed to, whatever that means, and less likely. Somebody beating the odds is great, especially in a situation like this. People living happy, fulfilling lives after an accident like this is awesome. It's wonderful. But that's different than a miracle. That's different than God stepping in and doing something. That's just beating the odds.
My brain was, I'm going to show the before and after of the miracle. So I have the topogram of October 27th while I was still in the coma, but then I have the topogram after the miracle, just a couple months after. And you can literally see the brain healed. But again, me being able to testify of an experience outside of my body and then live to tell the story, it doesn't make sense because the brain shouldn't have a recall or a memory of anything. So and I'll give you all the medical documents so you can show this.
But he says in many interviews that he is happy to give his medical documents.
But miraculously, and I actually document this on page 136, I have all the medical documents. So to anyone out there who just doubts that this is
I've seen the pictures.
It's real. Yeah, you see the photos.
You were jacked up.
Yeah, I was real jacked up. Swelling, broken skull. I'm sure you guys can throw this up on the screen on the edit. But everything. And then that was the before, and then that's the after. So it really and that was basically a couple months after I came back. It was just healed over.
So this is actually what started my email exchange with Gabe. At first, I thought I was just emailing people who represent Gabe. I didn't realize it was going directly to him. Hello, I'm reaching out as a YouTuber with over 200,000 subscribers. I've been watching some of Gabe's interviews, and he said he is happy to share his medical records. So I was hoping to have a look at them to confirm his stories. Sure, attached on this video. And then it's a link to this video that has this clip in it.
One of the most common questions is, did this guy actually die? What actually happened to his body? How do we make sense of all of these things? These medical documents right here that you are seeing show how my skull was cracked, there was a brain bleed. The doctor himself who has come out and testified how I needed to be resuscitated, and I was unconscious at the scene. I was then intubated and resuscitated in the trauma bay. Nurses did even ask if I had written a last will. That's why my experience is called a near-death experience or near-death encounter. And like thousands of others who've had these near-death encounters, the term death can be used interchangeably in different ways. Now, of course, if you're asking if I was medically dead for 18 days, the answer would be no, because I was in the coma for 18 days.
Now, first of all, even if he did die, that doesn't mean he went to heaven. But I was curious because he said he would share the medical documents, but then he kept showing the same 3 MRI images. That can't be the only documents he's referring to, right? So I sent this email. So he says he's going to show the full documents in this video, but he only shows a couple screenshots of x-rays and talks about them. Do you have access to the actual documents? This video shows very little. I'm not a doctor. I don't know how to read brain scans. So I sent it to my friend who is a nurse, but she was also like, I'm not a doctor. So I asked for more medical documents, and once again, he sent me those 3 images. So I asked him if he had more documents to share, even something that might say he was in a coma for 18 days. Just something. Maybe some documentation that he flatlined or something. And he just sent photos of him at the hospital and said his medical records were private, which of course they are. Yeah, medical records are private, but he's the one who's been saying that he's happy to share the medical documents with people. And now he's the one refusing because he says they are private. If we wanted to confirm a miracle, you'd think you'd release the documents confirming that miracle, but whatever. And one doctor saying that it's a miracle isn't evidence of anything. When it comes to something that defies what we know about medical science, the evidence would come from having those medical documents studied by other doctors, confirmed by other doctors. One religious doctor who says there's a religious influence on this recovery is not evidence. Hey everybody, just popping in here, had this video ready to go, and then I got this comment on Patreon after they saw the early version of this video, and I was like, hey, you should probably add this into the video. So Miranda said I could do this. This is one of our wonderful patrons, Miranda, who said this. I was a tech in a neuroscience ICU for 17 years. I am very far from being a doctor, but I don't recall ever seeing a neurosurgeon give much of a shit about skull x-rays. You need to see a CT scan, and Gabe did not show us that, even though CTs definitely would have also been done. Also, I could not even begin to count the number of people I've seen make unexpected recoveries from severe brain injuries. Young people like Gabe have an especially good chance, as they have a higher degree of brain plasticity. what happened to Gabe was not a miracle. He simply healed thanks to medical science and good luck. He might say that his good fortune came from Jesus, but then he's got to explain all the devout Christians I saw who did die despite all the prayers of their families. Did God just not love them as much? Yeah, something to think about.
My experience is called a near-death experience or near-death encounter. And like thousands of others who've had these near-death encounters, the term death can be used interchangeably in different ways.
You show that they might just be a little bit squished.
They're not squished.
Like, it was like, whoa. And ironically, there was no pain that I felt, actually. Even no quote-unquote death, although they did have to resuscitate me. And then I was still in the coma.
And blood was not only gushing out of my ears, but vomit filled my lungs. That's actually pretty much what killed me. And that hospital as
even no quote unquote death.
The brain activity was
gone.
Was regardless.
Again, it wouldn't prove that he went to heaven if we knew that he died. But he's not even consistent on that. One thing I did find very suspicious, though, was this video.
The devil loves the song WAP and is using it to get into your life and many other songs. A lot of people think the devil looks like this, that if he would come into their life, that he would have a pitchfork in his hand and horns in his head. But the Bible actually describes the devil faking himself to be an angel of light.
So according to his narrative, he came out of the coma on November 12th, 2021.
First thing that I saw the calendar. And you know what I said? This was really funny. I said, that calendar's wrong because it was November 12th. But the last time I'd been on the earth was October 25th.
But he posted the video about WAP on November 11th of 2021. So I said this, while I'm here, how did Gabe post a YouTube video about the song WAP while he was in a coma? And Gabe responded his family and friends had access to his phone and knew that he cared about posting consistently, so they posted that video for him while he was in the coma. It's a download from his TikTok that his YouTube channel admin downloaded and posted while he was in the coma. As evidenced by the date of this video, January 2021 on TikTok, Gabe did not make that video on November 12th. After his recovery, and years later, he took down the original TikTok because he wanted to streamline his channel and talk less about cultural topics, songs. But duets are still available of that original TikTok, which is the link I emailed. And that's true. So his family knew that he cared about posting content consistently, so they posted it for him. But when I checked it, it was the only video posted in those 18 days, which could mean he didn't post at all in those 18 days, or it could mean he's deleted all those videos and just forgot to delete this one. And it is possible that when they were super worried that he was going to die, wondering if he would ever come out of the coma, that they thought to themselves, you know what Gabe would really want right now? He would really want us to post that video about this song where those ladies talk about their wet-ass pussy. But it's okay. He welcomes scrutiny.
For sure. Well, I welcome scrutiny. I lean into conversation, and I truly am not even bothered by those comments because I believe in civil discussion, and ultimately this testimony isn't about myself. It's Christ and Christ alone. And even I wrote the title of my book, and that gets a lot of people because...
And to be fair, he did not have to respond to me at all.
And if somebody could put a gun to my head and say, did you really see Jesus? Did you really have this encounter? And I would say, yes, shoot me, because I'll never back down. I didn't write this for me.
Yeah.
I don't need them to accept me because I'm already accepted by him.
It's got to be so frustrating for so many Christians that people like Gabe give atheists like me so much material to work with. But like any of my videos, just because I personally am an atheist, the point here isn't saying that because Gabe Poirot is a liar, that means that Christianity is not true. The point in this video is to examine this claim. I am not making a blanket statement with this video about Christianity. Each claim of a belief system should be examined on its own and should stand on its own merits. And we should be questioning Gabe's fantastic journey.
But why do you think a story like yours triggers skeptics to the extent that that they tend to, ask more questions, and some are generously asked and some are not, right?
Because it's an extraordinary claim, and you should question everything, especially extraordinary claims.
But what do you think it is about a story like yours that really ignites that kind of inquiry?
Well, because it challenges our entire perception of life, because all we're used to is what's on earth, right? Flesh and blood. So if life is more than flesh and blood, if you could have an experience, a vision, not just a vision, but an experience outside of your body, that starts to challenge like everything we're used to, right?
Yeah.
If your friend were to say to you, I can walk through walls, you probably wouldn't just take them at their word. You would want to see them walk through the wall. You would want to see a demonstration. Being skeptical of a fantastical claim isn't a character flaw. It's common sense. And he's right. It does challenge our perception of reality. So, therefore, it should be looked at. We got to this stage that we are at in our understanding of how the world works because we question things. Questioning things has been a huge part of why we have the scientific knowledge that we have, why we have so many advances in medical care and understanding of the human body, why we have the technology we have. So yeah, you should look into things like this. Criticizing people for asking questions is just a sign that you worry that your claims won't hold up under scrutiny. And not to toot my own horn here, but I think I've shown pretty clearly today that what Gabe has said does not hold up under scrutiny. Or at the very least, it needs to be questioned more and should not be taken at face value. Do I personally believe in an afterlife? No, I haven't seen any evidence that would make me believe that. Do I think you're a bad person if you believe in the afterlife? Of course not. Not even slightly. My primary concern is how you treat people here, in the one life that we know for sure we have. Using people's fear of death and desire for answers about the afterlife to make up a story and then sell a book so that you can take advantage of that fear, that's just disgusting. Using it to push an anti-feminist, anti-LGBTQIA, anti-choice agenda is very dangerous. Again, I hope he changes his ways. I hope he snaps out of it. I hope he eventually makes a public apology. I really hope he becomes a better person. I'm not saying he's got to lose his faith. I'm not saying he's got to walk away from his religion, but he's got to do better. And he's not the only person who needs to be called out in this video. Ryan Miller, Eric Huffman, Lila Rose, Ben Hughes, Liz Wright, Tony Merkel, Sidney Goldman, all the other influencers and pastors who had this guy on in hopes of views, I hope they start to think before platforming someone like this. I hope they do better going forward before adding legitimacy to someone like this who is so blatantly, obviously full of shit. Again, I'm not saying I want them to renounce their faith, but just because somebody is in the same religion as you doesn't mean they're telling the truth. No matter who you are, you're allowed to question things and you're allowed to use your critical thinking skills. Hey everybody, thank you so much for making it this far. If you know someone who may benefit from it, send it their way. As always, I love you all so very deeply and so very much.
Work, Sky Moon.